Part 1.
You will hear a woman talking on the phone to a campsite manager. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5.
Hello, Lake Payne Campground. Can I help you?
Oh, hi, yes. I wonder if we could book a site on your campground.
Sure. My computer's down at the moment, so I just need to get a form. Okay. How many nights would you like to stay for?
Well, ideally, we'd like to stay for 5.
5 nights? Okay. So when are you planning to arrive?
Well, we'll be travelling around the area from mid-July, and we think we'll be at the lake by about the 24th.
Let's see. July's a busy time. We could probably fit you in, but to be honest, if you want 5 nights, it would be better to get here a day earlier. We've got a big group coming at the end of the month.
OK, the 23rd's fine. We weren't sure, so...
Great. Do you just want somewhere to park and pitch a tent, or do you have an RV?
An RV?
Yeah. You know, a recreational vehicle? A camper van.
Oh, right. Yes, we're driving a van, so...
Okay, that's fine. So, what name is it, please?
It's Hepworth. That's Hepworth.
Okay, thanks. I've heard that name before.
Well, it's quite common in England, particularly in Yorkshire. That's where we're from.
I was going to ask if you were in the UK. It's a really good line, isn't it?
Yes.
Would this be your contact number?
Yes, it's 07968 355 630.
Great, thanks.
Do you want my home number as well?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
We supply a number of facilities. I don't know if you're familiar with the way campgrounds work here?
It would be good if you could explain.
Well, you're coming in the RV, so would you like to hook up to our electricity?
Oh, yes, please.
You can also attach your vehicle to the water taps here.
I hope it's all easy to do.
Yeah, you just plug into the electricity and switch on the water. The people who hire out the RVs will explain it all.
Okay. And what about wastewater?
Sure. You can have a site with a sewer. Or I think you guys call it a drain. That's a bit extra. Not all campgrounds have that facility, you see.
Fine, we'll have it. So what's the total and...
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Okay, I've allocated you a site, so you need to note the code down.
Right, I'll just get a pen.
Most of our sites are coded using letters and numbers, EW or SEW.
Uh-huh.
So yours is one of the SEW ones, and it's number 47.
Got that.
That's the area that has all the requirements you need.
Is it easy to find when you get there?
What time will you be arriving?
I'm not sure, but it could be quite late.
Okay, so the reception could be closed. We close at 6.
Oh, dear.
It's okay. I'll tell you where to go. As you come into the campground entrance, you'll see our office.
Mm-hmm.
Drive past the front door. There's another office next to ours. That's the business office. Yeah, and there's a pool behind that.
Okay. It will be good to have a swim.
It's open till 8, so feel free to use it. Keep going past all those, to the end of the track. At the top, you'll come to at the very end, there's a laundry.
Okay.
Turn left at the laundry, and you'll see your own sites straight ahead of you. They're all clearly labeled.
That sounds easy enough.
Just before you hang up, we've had a few problems with campers with, stuff left lying around.
Oh.
Well, it may be an oversight, but we do ask our visitors to take away all their litter.
Of course. Otherwise someone has to clear it up.
That's right. Also in the morning, we do have washrooms, and once the reception's open, you'll be able to get a key for the shower.
Right.
You can keep it while you're on the site, but could you return it when you leave?
I'll make sure we get it back to you.
Yeah, otherwise we don't have enough to go around.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. See you soon.
Yeah, bye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear someone talking on the radio about colours. You now have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Well, it's a colourful start to the day on DB Radio. Kathy, what have you got to tell us?
Thanks, Brian. I thought I'd talk about 2 areas today where colour plays a huge role in our lives, and they are food and fashion. So let's start with food, and more specifically, food colouring. In many parts of the world today, people like the food they purchase to be the right colour. So if we buy tinned or canned vegetables, such as green peas, it's highly likely that the contents have been enhanced through the use of colouring agents. Peas are naturally green, you might say, but they may not be green all over, or they may not be the most pleasing shade of green. So a natural additive or two can quickly sort that out, just as it can the perfectly minty green ice cream that we buy our children. Children are a big market for food and are easily tempted by colour. Breakfast cereals, for instance, that come in various shades of brown, are often altered using caramel, a natural brown food colouring derived from caramelised sugar. This also gives the cereals a shiny, mouth-watering appeal, which is hugely tempting for consumers. In fact, natural food colouring goes back a long way. One of the oldest, or perhaps the most well-known natural food colours, is red, or cochineal, named after the insects used to make it. Aztec Indians created a crimson dye from the bodies of crushed beetles. Producing cochineal is very costly, so it was unpopular with consumers for some years. But health scares linking artificial red dyes to cancer have meant that more shoppers are buying cochineal again. Now, there's one food colour that manufacturers use with a certain amount of caution, and that's blue. Our ancestors believed that food this colour was dangerous. If you think about it, very few naturally occurring foods are blue, and there is little demand for the colouring. In fact, if you're trying to lose weight, experts suggest that you put your food on a blue plate. It's almost guaranteed to kill your appetite.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
OK, let's look at another area where colour is a key issue. If you say you've bought something new to wear, often the first question people will ask is, what colour is it? Yet the answer doesn't necessarily indicate that the colour was your preferred choice. As consumers, we have to balance how we feel in certain colours with what is fashionable at the time. You think you've suddenly developed a desire to wear orange, whereas in fact the shops are full of it and you've ended up buying an orange shirt that may or may not suit you simply because it's this season's colour. Well, the interesting thing here is that colourists, as they're called in the business, have to look ahead and say what colour models will be wearing in fashion shows several years in advance. To get this right, they have to consider how long it will take to produce the cloth dyes, they have to set up deals with suppliers, and bear in mind the constant changes in consumer taste. So what may seem to be this season's colour has actually been agreed years before. So what do we think about the colours we wear? Like everything, our tastes alter with age. In general, though, we think that black makes people look and feel thinner, while red does the opposite. White goes with everything, whereas yellow is harder to match. And nothing alters the fact that there are certain colours that we never feel comfortable wearing. And finally, whether it's food or fashion, anyone in the business field knows that it isn't enough to get a product the right colour. Even the packaging has to be carefully designed in order to maximise sales. It's no good, for instance, wrapping an item in brown paper if you want it to stand out. Much better to go for eye-catching colours, or in fact, in today's world, green has become very popular because it promotes the view that the company cares about the environment. In addition to their products, businesses also have to think about the people who come up with the ideas. If you surround your workers with drab colours, they'll come up with equally dull ideas. This isn't rocket science. We used to associate red with creativity in business, but it turns out, according to a recent study, that blue is a much better stimulus for creative thought. So the colour's not all bad.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3. You will hear an interview with Students Placement Officer talking about work placements. First, you have some time to read questions 21 to 25.
Hello, Mike.
Hi, Dave. Come in and take a seat.
Thanks. Can you explain to our students how a work placement increases their chances of securing a job after they've graduated?
Well, the most obvious thing to say here is that many graduates go on to work for the company that offered them the placement experience in the first place.
Yes, I can see why this might happen, but in a more general sense, what are the benefits of a placement?
Right. Placements give students a real insight into the culture of the workplace and how they can transfer their knowledge and skills to it. By drawing on placement experiences, graduates are able to sell themselves more effectively when applying for a job or compiling a CV. And at the interview stage, graduates appear more confident and can express themselves in a language appropriate to their chosen career.
Okay, fine. And what about the employer's perspective on work placements? How do employers benefit?
Employers can see how a prospective employee performs within a team, also whether they are a good communicator and problem solver. It's a job with duties and responsibilities at a level that an undergraduate should cope with. Work placements help employers to recruit the right person for the job.
And what about when the student returns to college at the end of the placement? What advantages does the work experience bring to college work?
Well, the majority of students find their placements to be positive learning experiences. Work experience enables students to make links between theory and practice, which should facilitate academic learning.
Right, and just one last thing on placements. What about mentorship and support during the work placement?
Each student has a mentor in the workplace and a placement tutor, an academic member of staff who makes regular visits to the workplace to discuss the student's progress and, if necessary, resolve any problems or issues.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Now you have some time to read questions 26 to 30.
Now, continuing with our theme of graduate employment, we're going to talk about soft skills, what they are, and why you need them. Mike, can you define what is meant by soft skills?
Yes, soft skills are an extension of what I mentioned earlier when I spoke about team working and communication. It's not sufficient these days to have only the know-how. By that I mean technical skills to do the job. Employers also look for personal qualities and interpersonal skills.
And why are personal qualities so important in the business world?
Well, employers want people that are going to add value to their business and not detract from it. Simple things like lack of punctuality, showing up on time and being dependable will always be important to any company, as are honesty and integrity. These personal characteristics are an inherent part of an individual's makeup and are difficult to change. Soft skills also include coping skills when faced with difficult situations and challenges. Again, performance in these areas is linked with inbuilt traits.
I see. And what about interpersonal skills? Can't these be improved with practice or training?
Yes, they can, because it is possible to change the way that you interact with colleagues and customers. The ability to communicate effectively, both through speech and in your documentation, is at the core of interpersonal skills. Equally important is the ability to demonstrate respectful listening.
And how will good soft skills help you in an interview situation?
Soft skills are vital to a successful interview. The impression you create can play a large part in the decision to make a job offer or not. Employers need to know that you have the right attitude. Will you fit in? Are you a team player? Do you appear positive and enthusiastic? You must be able to make the necessary changes to market yourself in this way.
Well, thanks, Mike. That's most interesting.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 4.
Part 4.
You'll hear a lecturer talking about Charles Darwin and Galapagos Islands. First, you have some time to read questions 31 to 40.
Today I'm going to talk about a man who explained how life on Earth evolved through a process of natural selection, the survival of the fittest. His name is Charles Darwin, and he was born in England in 1809. Darwin's mother was the daughter of the renowned Staffordshire potter Josiah Wedgwood, and his father was a wealthy doctor. Darwin's mother died when he was 9 years old, and his father sent him to boarding school. During vacations, Darwin would collect and study wildlife, especially insects. In 1825, Darwin attended the University of Edinburgh to study medicine. However, he lacked the aptitude for the subject, being more interested in botany. He joined a student natural history group which introduced him to the science of geology. Darwin left medical school 2 years later without completing his training. Darwin's father was disappointed by his son's failure at Edinburgh, and he sent him to Cambridge to study theology. He graduated from Cambridge in 1831, aged 22, but decided against becoming a clergyman, much to the dismay of his father. Whilst at Cambridge, Darwin had met a professor of botany, who encouraged him to pursue his interest in natural history, and later recommended him as a crew member on the Royal Navy mapping ship HMS Beagle. The ship embarked for South America in 1831, sailing from Plymouth, England. It dropped anchor in Brazil, Argentina, the Falkland Islands and Chile, before arriving at the Galapagos Islands in 1835. Here Darwin observed species of plants, birds and reptiles that were unique to the islands. The rest of the journey took in Sydney, Australia and Cape Town, South Africa, with stops in the Keeling Islands and Mauritius. The route back to England included a stop in the tropics of South America, where Darwin made further important discoveries. The journey took 5 years and enabled Darwin to study life on 3 continents, collecting plants, insects and rock samples whilst taking notes and making drawings. In 1839, Darwin married his cousin Emma Wedgwood, and they had 10 children. He published the zoological findings of the HMS Beagle expedition between 1838 and 1843, in several parts, covering birds, fossils, insects, reptiles and mammals. Darwin continued with his research into natural selection, culminating in his seminal work On the Origin of Species, published in 1859. The book was an overnight success, though it caused widespread controversy, because its theories appeared to conflict with the accepted religious view of creationism. Nevertheless, Charles Darwin's theories gradually gained acceptance, and when he died in 1882, aged 73, he was honoured by being buried in Westminster Abbey. He will always be known as the father of evolution. Of all the places Darwin visited, it is the Galapagos Islands that are most associated with his theory of evolution. The islands lie in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Ecuador, South America. The word Galapago is Spanish for terrapin, and it refers to a small edible turtle that Spanish sailors used as a food source. Darwin observed variations in turtles, reptiles, birds and other species unique to each island, suggesting that the animals had adapted to their specific environment. The distances between the islands were too large for the animals to interbreed, so they must have descended from a common ancestor. Darwin also found fossilized remains of creatures that were now extinct, consistent with a failure to adapt to changes in habitat. Darwin believed in the survival of the fittest. That is to say, only those members of a species that were best adapted to their surroundings would survive. For example, the finches on the island had beaks of a different size and shape suited to their diet. Long pointed beaks to probe for grubs and to grab small seeds, or wider sturdy beaks for cracking nuts and eating larger seeds. The extinction of animals not capable of competing for the food is vital to Darwin's theory of natural selection.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.